This episode of Around the Layout is brought to you by Spring Creek Model Trains. Family owned for 25 years, Spring Creek is your destination for model trains. Check out springcreekmodeltrains.com for a wide variety of offerings from today's top manufacturers and exclusive products found nowhere else. Whether in Deschler, Nebraska, or at a train show near you, stop in and say wow. To see where they'll be next, visit their website at springcreekmodeltrains.com. If you own a protothrottle, it's time to upgrade your fascia with TullyModels.com fascia protothrottle holders. Experience safe, one-handed operation of your protothrottle and easily shift from engineer to conductor in a snap. With 4 available configurations to choose from, including integrated cup and pick stick holders, Tully Models has a holder for you. Don't have a protothrottle? No problem. TullyModels.com has fascia holders for Digitrax and NCE throttles and holders for your smartphone, too. Check out the entire lineup at TullyModels.com. For over 25 years, Highball Graphics has been providing high-quality decals for railroads in New England, Canada, and beyond. With over 2,000 sets in scales N through G, Highball Graphics has you and your project covered. Highball Graphics specializes in custom decal orders, serving freelance railroads worldwide. Check out their easy-to-use website at highballgraphics.com or email them at info@highballgraphics.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. It's time once again for Talking Ops with Don Irace. And joining us back in the southern studio in the train shed in Sebastian, Florida, who knows for how long, Don Irace. Don, good to see you, my friend.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here back at the southern studio for a little bit anyway, heading up north to the NER convention, and then I'll be back for at least a few months. Anyway, we'll see. You never know.
You moved to Florida. But all the traveling lately, I say you're a New Englander again with a winter home in Florida. It just seems like you're up here, down there, back, forth, but good to see you. And I'm sure your layout is glad to see you and you're glad to see it as well.
Yeah, no, I've been in here for a few days. I haven't turned a wheel, but because I'm too busy catching up on other stuff. So, but I'll get there. But I mean, when I come back, my father's coming back with me. So, we'll be down here and we'll be in here operating almost every day like usual. But all the guys are all getting all wound up. They want to get going again. So hopefully that'll happen when I get back from the convention.
Now, that'll be a lot of fun. I know you had your dad down there about this time last year or so.
Yeah, I think it was more, I think it was like it might have been the end of September. I know he was down there October, November, December. He was out for 3 months, and then I took him back the first week of January.
Yeah, so about that time last year. But what I'm remember is you guys got a lot of operating in and spending a lot of time out in the shed, which is awesome for you to be able to do. And I think you'll probably gain a few operators here pretty soon as those snowbirds return, right?
Yes, yeah. Vinny will be back. Dick will be back. Well, they usually get back. It's probably October. Dick gets back a little later, but he's moving. He's permanently moving down here, so he won't be leaving anymore. Jeff has been calling up. He wants to get going again. John is almost done with his long trip for the year, so he'll be back Sunday. But the crew will be back, and we'll get going. And between my layout, his layout, hopefully Jeff gets his done so we can have a third layout now, and it'd be a lot nicer with 3.
Absolutely. And yeah, so you've got that all started. But in between all of that, you and I have been having a couple conversations, and tonight it's just going to be you and me and a list that you created. We're going to talk about elements of a great operations session, the things that we want to make sure that we have, the checklist of sorts of making sure things are in place and ready to go. And at the end, the operators are itching to come back and begging for more. So we're going to talk a bit about that. I'm loving talking about it because I haven't been operated in so long. So maybe this will just kind of fulfill it a little bit, but and remember what it's like to operate. But we're going to have fun talking about this.
Yes, absolutely.
So why don't you start by telling us elements of a great operation session? What's that first thing on your list?
All right, but for me, it's when you first get there, how it's organized, how the host has control. He reads what he would call his rule book, or what he expects people are going to be doing. It's that kind of an organization that really kicks it off. If you're going to be using a fast clock, you're not using a fast clock. How do you talk to the dispatcher? Most hosts will have a list of what they expect you to know before the op session even starts. So that's always a good thing, because at least there's some kind of action that's going to happen, and you're not just going to like, okay, here's your job, here's your job, here's your job, have a ball.
So I know, as a person who has been to multiple new operating sessions, that piece is very key, because it's intimidating to go to somebody's layout, a new layout. And I've been to a few, went out to Tony Pellegrino's in St. Louis, operated that for the first time that might be the last time I operated, thinking about it, back to July, feels like forever. But when you get that briefing, when you start to get a base understanding, you do that preliminary walk around as a new visitor and you get an idea of the layout, but then the owner of the layout tells you, you don't have to guess, it starts to build that comfort level.
Right. Exactly. Yep. That's, it's like I said, the more information the host can feed you before the op session starts, the easier and more comfortable it's going to be for the operator, because he knows what he's going to do, where he's going to be. He has information about the layout, and you can walk around the layout to get an idea and familiarize yourself where the towns are, where the yards are. It's just nice to do that. I mean, I've been to a lot of different op sessions, and some of them is like you don't get a lot of information, and you basically got to kind of learn it along the way. But the more information you can have for your operators before the session, it's a good thing.
And the visiting person, the operator themselves, has a responsibility in that too, don't they?
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, you should adhere to all the whatever rules that were put out, in front. Don't try to do more than what the rules say, because sometimes if you try to do something that you shouldn't be doing, you can mess up not only you, but you mess up the guy behind you and the guy behind him and the guy behind him. There's an order and there's a flow, and you should just pay attention to the rules. A lot of guys will give you a handout like before you even go. Like most of these op session weekends we go on, most of the operators will send you an email ahead of time telling you what he had, name of the railroad, how many operators he has, what jobs are available, what he expects from people, coming down. And you just makes you more comfortable, before you even get there. And they just go over that whole thing when you get there. Everybody's in one room. He stands up in front of everybody, goes down his checklist, and then they start handing jobs out.
Yeah, it really sets the tone, doesn't it? From the beginning.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, it's very important for that to happen. The next thing on the list is aisle space. That's a big one. I've been to some layouts where I've been packed in the corner. I've been some layouts where you feel like you're operating in a baseball field. To me, aisle space is a big thing. When I design my layout, I design aisle space, then the layout. And I think a lot of people are catching on to that these days, because, like I said, back in the early days of, say, like Rail Run, there was some layouts up there. They were tight. I mean, they would be cramming 15 guys into a room that's only big enough for 5. The problem is that, again, they're trying to host as many people as they can possibly get in layouts that really shouldn't have any more than 4 or 5 people in it, and you're trying, like I said, you're trying to, I swear to God, I was in one layout, that thing was so packed. If there was a fire, we'd all be in trouble, because that's another thing too. Yeah. Stuff happens, you know what I mean? You gotta, that's the other thing. Getting back to the first part, the starting part is knowing where the exits are. That's another big thing.
Right.
Especially if you're in a basement layout. You got to be able to work comfortable. I find it very awkward to work back to back with somebody, or somebody's standing right next to me. It's not, I mean, if it's your guy, if you're working a 2-man crew, that's one thing. But if you're not working a 2-man crew, to have guys all around you while you're trying to work, and it's not comfortable. I'm gonna, I'll be honest. I don't enjoy operating on layouts, that the people are on top of each other. You're best off with smaller crews and having if you got small aisle spaces, smaller crews will help eliminate people being on top of each other. Some people are claustrophobic too, and you get too many people around them, and they get all fidgety, and then they're not having a good time because their anxiety's up. And it's just not very enjoyable at all.
Well, it definitely for those that are planning layouts that are going to have operating sessions, when we've talked about it quite a few times about planning ahead and making sure that you allow for wider aisles. And like you said, plan the aisles, then plan the layout and think about the room and don't try to fit 10 pounds of material in a 5-pound bag.
Exactly.
But if you already have a layout that already has some tighter aisle space, like you said, part of that or a huge part of that is to manage it and compensate for the fact that that you have smaller aisle space, whether it be inviting less people or as you're planning operations on your layout, spreading jobs out. And I know that you've done that on your layout as well, where you've kind of planned for jobs to occur where people aren't going to be elbow to elbow with each other.
Right. Now, so take my layout, for instance. So when I designed this layout, like I said, I marked all the aisle space on the floor first. Then I built the benchwork beyond the aisle space because the aisle space, after my first layout, some spots were tight. I know one spot in my middle peninsula in the big room, it was like 18 inches. And at one point, there's 6 guys standing in that aisle, right? And they can't even reach what they're doing, And I went around there one day. I looked in there. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And what I shut the layout down in December. I ripped that whole peninsula out and I rebuilt it. Made the aisles went to 3 feet, and then by the time I redesigned everything, there was only 2 guys in there at any one given time because what the mistake I made is I ran the main line in with all the switching jobs instead of putting the main line on the outside and the switching jobs in the middle. So I changed all that. All the main line was on the outside, and there was 2 switching jobs in the middle. Actually, one left the yard and went to a whole nother area, but one guy stayed right in there. Then you had the interchange guys coming in there with a couple of trains. But it was so much nicer, and everybody enjoyed it so much more. Guys said about this is way better than it used to be. I mean, if like on this, like I said, getting back to my layout, I wanted 4 operators. I said I can have the way I laid it all out. I had the paper mill and the guy in the yard, and then PR3's guys by himself, as because you've done it. PR2 is at the other end of the layout. And I said 4 guys are going to be good to start, and we'll see if we can sneak in that 5th guy. And I've pretty managed to sneak in the 5th guy by changing a little bit of my operation around. But I wouldn't go any more than 5 guys. 5 guys in my layout's a limit. I wouldn't have any more than that. Guys that have layouts that are under construction and they're kind of operating on them, but they're still construction. If they have small spaces, the easiest way to try to make a little bigger is look at your layout and see if you can't take a little bit of the fascia and push it back. Even if you went 6 inches on each end, and try to open just 6 inches on each side, that gives you 12 more inches in the aisle. So it just that little bit opens up and just push your track back. I mean, this is for guys that are in the construction stage that a lot of guys operate while they're building, which is nothing wrong with that because it helps to prove what you're trying to build and what you want to accomplish, instead of building the whole thing and then start operating on it. But like I said, aisle space is a big thing, and it makes the comfort level nice and takes care of guys because guys are not going to come in and say, you ain't going to know if they're claustrophobic or not. That's like having signals on a layout and you got a guy who comes in who's colorblind. The guy's not going to come in and say, oh, look, I'm colorblind. You're only going to find out he's colorblind when he starts blowing through red lights. That's when you're going to find out he's colorblind.
Well, I thought those signals were just there for suggestion anyway. Yeah. I didn't know that they actually had a meaning to them. I thought they were decorative.
That's okay until you run to the guy in front of you.
That's true. That's very true. With a layout like yours, the one that you had in Scituate and even the one you have now in Sebastian, Double deck also provides a little bit of that challenge as well of keeping guys not only, tight aisle spaces, but also spaced out in the planning process of operations to make sure that they're also not on top of each other, right?
Yeah, right. So, using my layout an example, when I first designed it, I don't know what I was thinking. I had the Pawtucket area was right over the paper mill, and I had the main line on the outside. After I started designing, looking, I'm like, oh, you know, Sam, I can't do this. I says, because I'm going to have a guy working at paper mill, a guy working PR2, and a guy in the yard. They're going to be standing all over each other over there, and there ain't going to be nobody on the other side. So I quick call to Joe because he did the drawing, and I said, we got to swap this. It's got to be swapped. So what I did is I pushed the paper mill backdrop back, to give me some more space for the paper mill, and I decreased where Dennison in because I only needed like 12 inches over there to do what I wanted to do. And then I put the PR2 and Pawtucket on top of that and pushed the backdrop on the PR2 side out towards the other side to make the PR2 side wider and shorten the main line on the opposite side. And that worked out good. So nobody is, well, you've operated here, so you know what it's like, and nobody's standing on top of each other. I mean, sometimes you got a train coming into the yard, you might have three guys standing over there, but for the most part, during the whole session, I mean, you can pretty much put your arms out and not bother anybody.
And for a big guy like me, I certainly appreciate a little bit extra space and a little bit more elbow room. It definitely makes things more comfortable, especially when you're doing operations for the first time or when you are operating a layout with car card and waybills, because you definitely need a little bit more room to be able to flex that. Now, I know you've gone the switch list. That definitely helps with that as well. And I think that may be one of those considerations when you're trying to compensate for narrow aisle spaces, thinking about the way you operate as well to try to make sure that guys are comfortable.
Right. Yeah. I did the car card thing. I started with the car cards on this layout too, and I quickly realized that I should just go to switchless. When you have a small area and you're trying to keep your aisles open, anything that's hanging off the fascia restricts that opening because you walk into it. I got the proto throttle holsters. I've backed into that thing more times myself and broke it. So, but it just restricts the openings a little bit more. But I also find using the switchless, you don't have to have like racks to put the car cards in, and you're fumbling around with the stuff. The switchless is a little hook, you hang it on the hook, and you just look at it, you put it there, and it's, I don't know. To me, some people, when you got a large layout, a lot of industries, switchless may not work for them because it's a lot of preparation, to do that. But I'll go to a layout and whatever they're using is fine by me. You know what I mean? I know how to use car cards, I know how to use switch lists, the timetable stuff and the train order stuff is, that's kind of a stickling point with me. Everybody has their likes, and the TTTO thing is really not my bag. You know what I mean? It's like I've yet to go to a timetable train order layout that stayed on time using a fast clock. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen it be on time because when you bring a bunch of people that never done TT or TO stuff and and then you got a fast clock on top of it, it's like
Yeah, you
it's
got
not gonna
guys
happen.
like us that can barely get the
Yeah,
acronym out, right? TT and
yeah,
what
I
is
know.
it?
Yeah, I know.
TTO,
T
TTTO.
T with the
Yeah, exactly.
TTTO,
So
the
yeah,
train
and
train.
hey, it's great. It's a simulation of the era in which you're modeling.
Yeah, right.
It's just one of those things. And going back to your first thing on the list,
Uh,
if you want it to be successful, make sure you take the time to really explain out and make sure people understand it, and then provide the support too, because it's important to be able to make sure that they understand it and they're not being overwhelmed by the concept to a point where they're dragging even more because they've just gotten totally lost.
TTTO stuff works better with a crew, a normal monthly crew. If that's, with your guys, once your guys get used to it, then it works flawlessly. But when you bring in somebody, if you bring in three guys that never done TTTO operations, you can explain to them till they're blue in the face. They're not going to get it. You know what I mean? I mean, some guys might get it. I'm not saying everybody won't get it. I don't get it. I can tell you right now. I don't really care for it, so I don't really, but we don't operate it. There's not too many of them layouts out there that we operate on the, these places we go. I've yet to see one of them kind of operations. Mostly either switch list. 90% of them are car cards. Car cards are good. Make sure your switch list explain what you're going to do. What your job is going to be, what it entails, locomotive numbers. Make sure your cars are your cars are very legible. I know some guys they write out their switch list by hand. Some people may have trouble reading certain handwriting. I personally do all mine on Excel spreadsheet, so it's clearly legible. And I've adjusted them with kind of colored text in places to kind of help explain what cars are going in, what cars are coming out. And this is suggestions from my operators, how it makes it easier for them. And I am always open for suggestions to make things better and more comfortable for people that operate here. Car cards, again, you got to have information, where the card is, where it's going. Do I flip the card when I set the car out? Some guys say don't flip the cards. Some guys say flip the cards. That's nice to know ahead of time. I like when I do it, when I was doing car cards, I want you to flip the card to the next number once you place the car. Because if not, then I have to go back and do all that when it's all over. That's a part of the job. You spot the car, you mark the car as spotted, you flip it to the next waybill, you put it in the spotted box. This way here. That's a part of your job. Paperwork is very important to make sure it's legible and people understand exactly what you're talking about.
I want to slide my soapbox out here. I know this is the Don Irace list of elements of a great operating session, but I do want to make a point about switch lists. Not everybody does a switch list the same. Right. And it's so important. I've been to operating sessions where they hand you the switch list, and maybe this is partially me and partially them, or maybe just all me, but I'll say it anyway. There are times I look at a switch list and I have no idea what they're asking for,
especially when it's in dot matrix.
Yeah, and or it's so realistic, and then you feel like intimidated. Like if you're going to go to them and say, "I have no idea what you're asking for," and they're going to look at you and go, "What, you don't know? You don't know what railroading is?" No, I don't. I'm not a railroader. I'm a model railroader. Can you teach me something here? So again, going back, very first thing you mentioned and tying into what we're talking now, tell people and don't assume. Don't assume that they know, because they may not. They may not know the deep, rich history of a railroad from the Midwest that I've had no experience touching. Take the time, go through it, make sure that people understand and explain it. Don't make it overly cumbersome and in a complete pull on somebody's brain, because they may not have the capacity to handle it like a guy like me, right? I don't, my brain is, kind of tuned to what it's going to be tuned to, and the rest of the cells are resting. But, teach us a little bit and show us what you want out of it. And that will help us meet your expectations as operators.
Right. I mean, I haven't been on a ton of layouts that use an actual switch list. Most of them are all car cards. A lot of them, be surprised, they just pull a car, put a car. You know what I mean? It's like pull a box car, put a box car, pull a tank car, put a tank car. I mean, that's easy. I mean, there's really no explanation there. But like my switch lists are different than John Farrington's switch list. When I first went to John's and he started with the switch list, I looked at the switch list. I'm like, you're going to have to explain this. I says, because I have no idea what you're trying to tell me over here. But now that I've done it, it's automatic. You know what I mean? I know exactly what it's supposed to say. Even though his and mine are two totally looking different switch lists, he was pushing more for the dot matrix realization that the prototype railroads use. You know what I mean? It's just a sheet of paper with a bunch of cars on them where they're supposed to be going. And they're so used to looking at it like that, they automatically know what to do. But you throw that into a carpenter's hand in a model railroad, it's like what the hell does this mean? You know what I mean? I don't even know where to
Yep.
start with this thing. So,
Right. Right.
so that's stuff that helps new operators have a good time. They don't want to be frustrated. They don't want people to think that they don't know what they're doing. A lot, it's some guys are new to this stuff and they want to be operators and they're not seasoned professionals like some of us are, you know, and they need to learn it.
Like one of us are. Yeah.
No, you do all right. I mean, you
I
didn't
d-
you didn't have any problem with my switch list. You
Listen,
pretty much did everything.
I am fully capable of messing up any job that's handed to me, whether it be a yard, a road job, or a switching job. It don't matter. I can mess them all up. But
Uh,
we're going down the list of elements of a great ops session. And Don, what do you got on next on your list?
Another one's communications, like radios, stuff like that. If you're in a smaller room and you don't have a dispatcher, usually the host will play the dispatcher. He'll say, okay, you can go wait for this guy, blah, blah, blah. If you have a dispatcher, then you're going to there's a lot of ways they do it. You got two-way radios, or a lot of guys they're using, if you got a remote dispatcher, they're using Zello. You just got to make sure that there's a little radio etiquette, is what I'm getting at. I mean, radios are radios, FRS radios, they're all the same. What I'm talking about is using the radio. On an FRS radio, you need to key the mic up for a couple of seconds before you start talking, because if you just push the button and talk, the dispatcher, whoever you're talking to, is going to miss the first three words you say, and you're going to be doing it all over again. The other thing is, if somebody's talking on the radio, don't try to talk over that guy, because all you're going to get is a bunch of squealing noises, like you got dead ducks running around the room, and nobody's going to hear anything. So, I mean, there's not a lot with the communications, but those are the couple of major things. Don't talk over people when they're talking. Let them stop talking before you talk, and make sure you key the button on the radio long enough for the carrier to kick in, so the person you're talking to can understand what you're saying clearly. Just say the words what you want to do. Don't try to say a lot of different stuff that really means nothing. Just if you're going to leave and you got to go somewhere, you want to go here, you want to just say it in plain words what you want to do, because you're trying to add all these different acronyms to your sentences ain't really helping. It's just taking up radio time from the other guy looking at you because he wants to get on and do something. So that's pretty much it with the comm part. The other thing is throttles. So there's all kind of different throttles. You got your plug-in throttles, which are probably the better of the throttles because they're more crisp. They respond well. When you're operating, you should. A lot of guys, they get in, if they crack the throttle, if the engine don't stop moving right away, they just ratchet the thing right up and then it takes off. You know what I mean? And I've had that with guys over here, especially I have wireless, so I don't have Wi-Fi. I have the wireless. So on my decoders, I shut all the start delay off with the ESU decoders. I just uncheck that box, because I find if they just crack the throttle, as long as the engine starts to move, then they're good with the throttle. But if that engine don't start moving, as soon as they crack that thing, they'll ram that thing up, and there it goes, and then it runs into something else, or runs into some place that it shouldn't be. So a little bit of throttle etiquette goes a long way.
Speaking of throttles, a thing that a layout owner can do is check those throttles and make sure that they're all working beforehand. That certainly goes a long way to making sure that the operating session kicks off the right way.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, especially if you're running you run double-headed locomotives, and they're back to back. What I do on mine is I set it up ahead of time. So I put the lead locomotive in one recall, and I put the other locomotive in the other recall, because I have a point-to-point layout. So when you leave the yard and you go do your work, you're going to be using the trailing locomotive to come back with. The less guys have to start punching numbers into your throttles, the better off you are. You don't want guys making consists on your throttles, because with my old layout, we had big problems there. Guys were trying to make consists and they were using somebody else's address. And next thing you know, they're moving their engines. And then there's two other engines in the other end of the layout that are moving. And the guys go, why is my engines moving? So what I ended up doing over there, I set up all the consists ahead of time. And then I locked out my system, so only my throttle could make consists and no other throttles can make consists. And trust me, and it worked. It eliminated all that problem.
Nothing like fat fingering the
Right.
3903 into the
Yep.
3905, and next thing you
Yep.
know, another locomotive is taken off on the other side of the layout.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. But like I said, with that double headed, so what they got to do now is they pick their locomotive that they're going out with, and then usually when they get to where they're going, they got to swap ends anyway because they might have one trailing point move to do, and then the rest of them are all facing points. You know what I mean? So they'll be swapping back and forth. So it's just a matter of just hitting the recall to change from one locomotive to the other. It eliminates putting any data entry into them throttles at all because once they enter a wrong number, it's like, oh, my engine ain't moving. This ain't moving. That ain't moving. I had another instance too with the brakes. If you got braking on your decoders, tell them that. Tell them so I have a list on the back of all my throttles with all the functions are. Very important. Like if you use a proto throttle and you put the brake on, then you just slide the lever back over to release the brakes. Well, on a regular throttle, I use F10 on my brakes. If you hit F10 on your throttle, it stops. But if you try to crank the throttle up, it won't go.
Right.
You have to release the brake, so you have to hit F10 again, so the brakes back off. So I had guys that my engine ain't moving. Well, why not? Well, I don't know. It was moving fine. Did you put the brake on? Yeah. Did you take the brake off? Oh, well, maybe not. You hit that F10, you hear the air spit off, and off the thing goes.
Yeah.
But they need to know this. So,
Yeah.
like I said, the more information you provide to them, and like I said, all the function numbers and everything that's programmed in my cabs is all listed on the back. So all they do is turn the cab over. They can see what starts, the stop, the headlights, the ditch lights. Everything's there for them. So that's an important thing. Like you were saying earlier, make sure your throttles all work. If you got Wi-Fi, make sure all the throttles are hooked up to the Wi-Fi before everybody gets there. Don't start your system up, when everybody gets there and you're trying to get going, because that's when you got problems. My system's probably running like an hour and a half before anybody even gets here, and I check everything. Most of the time, my throttle's all set up for the job, because I know my operators, I know what throttles each guy likes to use. Some guys like the hammerheads, some guys like the '06 cabs, and then like I use my proto throttle. John will bring his proto throttle over if you have them, and I'm set up. It's very important that all that stuff is working.
I'm consider myself a pretty evenly tempered person. I mean, I've got my moments from time to time, but when frustration starts to set in, even when you're supposed to be having fun, sometimes you start doing things you probably shouldn't be doing. You get a little bit more throttle happy because now you're behind because something didn't
Mhm.
work right and all these things. And you have a responsibility as an operator to tone it down and just remember where you're at and that you're a guest in somebody's home. But for a layout owner, just remember it also helps to be prepared and keep them away from that heavy frustration too, because I'm
Right.
sure that'll help save a lot of aggravation and make them feel good about not only being there, but get them excited about coming back again too.
Right. So so that's a good point because, and something, you notice that mostly at the end of the op session, because if you were having troubles and you didn't understand what's going on, and you think you're behind, and you see guys that are finishing up and they're going to sit in the lounge and having a soda or a cookie or something like that, and you're looking like, well, I'm not going to get done, then that's when you start tensing up, you
Yeah.
know, and you shouldn't, because I'm a host and I can probably speak for most of the hosts out there. We are not fretting stuff like that. I tell my guys, even my normal crew, look, sometimes we don't hardly ever finish a complete op session here. We go 3.5, almost 4 hours, and there's still be stuff that's left that has to be done the next day. And I tell anybody, and even guest operators, like the first thing I tell them, look, enjoy yourself, take your time, especially guys who work in the paper mill. It's not an easy job for a new person. I don't care if it takes you an hour and a half, if it takes you 3 hours, if you don't finish it all. The important thing for me is that you have a good time and you want to come back and try it again. You may work the paper mill. It may take you 4 times before you actually finish it. Usually my paper mill, hour and a half, 2 hours. I got one guy that's so efficient in switching that it's like it takes him like physically, literally an hour, and he's probably all done with it, pretty close to being done with it. Then I got new guys that come in, they're just struggling to finish it, and they actually back themselves in a wall. They get the engine on the wrong side of the train. I don't know how they do it, but I give them a few pointers in the beginning of what they should do. That's this is what you should do first. Then after that, you can do whatever you want. But I'm just telling you, this is what you should do first. Because if you don't do this, the first thing, you're going to be in trouble for the whole night. And some guys even do the first thing and they're still in trouble for the whole night. But it is what it is because they're new and they're operators. As they come and keep coming and doing the job over and over again, and I don't let them come over and do the job twice in a row. They'll do the job. If it takes them 4 hours to do the paper mill, when the next time he comes in, he'll be doing another job. Because I like well-rounded crews that operate on my layout. Because I want all my guys, that my regular guys, to be able to run any job I have over here. And since sometimes, like I said, we still don't get it done.
Do you know what the direct opposite of the guy who switches your paper mill the most efficient way is?
Do I know the opposite? You?
It's me. It's me. If there was an OPSIG achievement for most imaginary diesel fuel burnt, that'd be me. That's me.
You?
I do the most inefficient moves, but we're all having fun, and it's a great thing. So again, talking elements of a great operating session, Don's list. What else you got on your list there, Don?
All right. So these are the ones that get me every time. I saved these two for last. Locomotive operation. That is a big one for me. I've been to a couple of push-pull centrals, I'll tell you. Nothing's more aggravating when you crack a throttle and an engine moves an inch, stops, and you just give it a little shove, it moves another inch, stops, and and this is how the whole night's going to be. Because that first impression of how that locomotive runs is going to be what the night is going to be in my book. All right. So it's very important. And people that operate in my layout know that my engines are like my little babies. They behave themselves. And I spend a lot of time tuning them and cleaning them and making sure. And I clean all my locomotives and all my track before every op session I have. I never not do it. I don't say, well, yeah, I got capacitors in my engine, so it's good enough. I can make it last 3 or 4 sessions. I can't. I could probably do 2 sessions without cleaning, but I'm a fanatic with that. So it's very important for me to have clean track because I don't want my operators to come up to me and say, oh, this thing ain't running good. And I got to give them another locomotive. Make sure as a host, you're kind of responsible for your locomotives to make sure that they run well. And the guys, they're going to get frustrated. And then if they get too frustrated, they're not going to want to come back. And it's they're not going to, they're going to, and trust me, they're going to talk about you on the way home in the car. They're going to say, you believe this guy's engines don't work? I'm not going to lie because we've had plenty of them conversations on the way home.
You and I have probably had that conversation once or twice. Yep. And you want to keep guys' hands off your layout.
Yep.
As good as they may be, you still want to keep their hands off of it. The only hands that should be on there are yours. And the better that not only locomotives, but rolling stock and anything that run correctly, the better chance you have of them not being tempted to stick their 5 fingers out there on something.
Right. I mean, because besides the locomotive operation, the one thing I didn't put on the list in the middle, and you mentioned rolling stock, is couplers. Put all the same couplers on the cars. Don't, let's not do the KD, the Accumate, the whatever. There's a whole slew of couplers out
Brand
there.
XYZ and everything in between.
have a basic coupler that you're happy with and put them on all your pieces of roll stock and test them. Make sure the heights are right. And one's not grabbing halfway up the box. It's just, there's all these little maintenance things because when a guy's towing a 30-car train up a helix or something like that, any kind of grade, and all of a sudden half the train starts going the opposite way you're going, it's frustrating for an operator because an operator would say, well, geez, how come this is doing this? This should be better than this. But couplers, I mean, rolling stock is rolling stock. There's all kind of different rolling stock out there, but the couplers are what keeps it all together. if your train don't stay together, and you can't, like, if you try to uncouple a KD against a Accumate coupler, they're two totally different animals. They're not even the same size. You got to have just like I went with the 158 KDs. I changed all mine over. I didn't like the fives. I had fives. Fives were nice. They worked great. I don't like them in photographs. You know what I mean? Because they're just not scale. They're just too big. So I used the scale head 158s, and they were good. You know, and like I said, they all went through the whole same test, the same piece of track, the height adjusters on both ends to make sure. So, and when I'm looking at trains, even when I'm not running a train, when I see a train go by me on my layout, I'm constantly looking at that train as it goes by to see if I notice any of the couplers are not the same height. I mean, you're gonna get some that are a little bit off, but I mean, I've seen some layouts where the top of the coupler is just about grabbing the bottom of the coupler before it, and it's like a 16th of an inch away of a runaway. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly.
There's no reason for that. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that's another thing. So locomotive operation is important to make sure your stuff runs, because you don't want guys touching your stuff, pushing it around, 'cause that's how things get broken in the couplers. And the other thing too is track power issues and derailments. If you got dead sections of track, you're going to have dead sections of track whether you got operators there, you don't have operators there. I got a couple of locomotives that don't have capacitors in them. Those are on my track cleaning train. So along with that, cleaning the track, they go around, and if they die, then I know I got a problem. But if you have a dead spot, you don't want, guy, your operators running through the same dead spot, because every operator that's running that layout may be running through that same dead spot. And then again, here comes the hands. The hands are coming on the layout. Cars are getting knocked over on their sides. Engines are getting knocked over. The railings are getting broken off. This is all stuff that can be fixed and not have to worry about. The operator should be touching the throttle and should be touching the pick on the car, uncouple the car. You shouldn't be picking up cars. I mean, some guys will get frustrated if they can't get the cars apart, and there goes the hands again on the car, picks the car up, puts it back on the track. Half the time it's not even on the track, it's derailed. When he's doing that, sometimes 3 cars get knocked over on their sides. They knock them over, wreck some scenery.
Or there goes the grab irons, or there
Oh, they're
goes
yeah, right. Yeah.
the coupler levers and
Yeah.
all the other things that are attached on these
Yep.
models. Yeah, for sure.
I had one guy that with huge hands, and he kept knocking my engine every time he get frustrated real quick, and I kept telling him, why do you get so frustrated? You know what I mean? Just relax. It's not him. He's got such big hands. He just keeps knocking stuff off the track. Well, he kept breaking the railings on the locomotives, you know. So finally, every time he came, I take those engines down with the broken railings, and that's what he used, because I'm not going to fix the railings. They're going to break again. So you get the engines with the broken railings.
I guess that's one way of getting a dedicated locomotive to you, right? Yeah.
So he has the same locomotives every time he comes, because he just can't be careful. It's you got to have some respect for people's property. I had another kid that good kid, he's a little tough to talk to, but he I always missing tank cars. I'm like, what the hell does this tank car go? I can't find this thing for tank car like 3 months. So I go underneath my skirt and to get some one day. I see a box with 3 boxes with 3 broken, destroyed tank cars in it. So he destroyed the bank car, and he find a box, he put them in, he put them on layout and didn't tell me. And I realized, that's why I keep the information, who does what jobs, because you can't hide from that. You know what I mean? So when I know I'm missing stuff, like I said, you got, make sure your track is good. You got power. There's no dead spots. Your switches work. The worst thing for operators is driving down the track, and all of a sudden 10 cars derail on a switch, because it's not closed all the way, or it's just, sometimes you get a piece of ballast in between the point rail and the stock rail. That happens. You can't really help it. You know what I mean? I have a vacuum car on my train, so any little ballast that breaks off, the vacuum picks it up. It's, there's the locomotive problems and derailments and track issues that's my biggest pet peeve obsessions. And luckily it's not. I mean, I've been to a few of them where it's happened, and I'm not shy. I will bring it to the host's attention. If you don't tell the host that there's a problem, he is not going to know that. It's very important that the
Right.
operator sees a problem. Bring it up. Don't be afraid to talk to the host. He's not going to bite your head off. Just say, look, there's a problem over here. We were dying over here, or we keep derailing on this switch, and he will make a note and put like I do, is I got those little push pins, and I'll put a push pin. If there's a problem, I will put a push pin there, and then the next day I'll be out here and I'll be fixing that thing, and I'll be running stuff back and forth through that switch until it's right. I've had issues with some switches over here, and if it give me too much trouble, I just get the Dremel tool, cut it out, and put a new switch in and reballast it, because I don't have time to try to appease a switch that don't want to behave.
Another great way to avoid all those problems, if you haven't listened to it yet, you can always go back to the episode Don and I did back in April where we were talking about bulletproof operations. You can check out that episode at aroundthelayout.com/156. And we'll also share a link to it in today's episode, aroundthelayout.com/186. I would say probably the last thing as you went through your list and kind of the overall message about setting tone is about having fun. And that's really a responsibility right from the beginning, is to set that tone and send that message. We're here to have fun. Yeah, we're simulating the railroad, but this is my hobby. This is enjoyment, and
Right.
Find a way to enjoy it yourself.
Exactly. There's no point in getting frustrated at an op session. There's no reason for it. I've seen it at this layout. Well, I'm not much of this layout, but in my old layout, when I had a lot more operators, I went from 15 operators to 5, and I've had all kind of different people over there. Some people came during open houses and ran. I've seen people sweat profusely, and I'm like, what is the matter with you? Oh, geez, I don't know what I'm doing. You're doing fine. Have fun. That's why you're here. That's the most important thing I can relate to anybody that's going to operate. The host wants you to enjoy the session, have fun, meet people. It's not going to, oh, geez, suppose I do this wrong. Suppose I don't do this right. That's fine. No, as long as at the end of the night, everybody has all their fingers and all their toes, and we didn't have to call the rescue on anybody. It's a good night.
That's a very good night. That's for sure. Yeah.
So just enjoy it and have a good time. And I tell my guys, look, you don't have to impress me. You don't have to do 3 jobs tonight. Do that one job, have fun, take your time, and enjoy it. That's all I ask.
I bet you pay your guys the same whether they complete 1 job or 3, right? The pay is still the same.
Yep. The pay is it's on the door. Pays on the door. That's what you get paid. Doesn't matter if you do 1 or you do 5. It's the same thing.
There you
the
go.
big fat zero.
Sure. That's right. That's right. Well, Don, I had a lot of fun sitting here talking to you about elements of a great operating session. We've had some really great operating sessions together at yours and at Mark Herrick's and the folks out in Syracuse that we've been able to operate with. And you've been able to travel around and see a lot of operating sessions and have a lot of fun. And hopefully the folks out there listening now will take this list and get themselves ready for yet some more great operating sessions. So, Don, thanks for coming by and talking ops with me this month.
Thank you for having me, Ray. See you next month.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders. Oh no!
Oh my God! I'm glad I'm not the editor.